Soon, but good evening, everyone. So we're continuing our series on halachic issues related to the coronavirus and quarantine and the pandemic. And one question that's come up is how to do Torah reading. So with social distancing, we can't do it the normal way with a Baal Koreh and someone getting Aliyah and a Gabbai and everyone else sitting right near each other. So there are different possible solutions. I'll just say before Ari even begins, what we do here at the Israel of Brookline, which I think is what most shuls in North America do, though not all, is that the Baal Koreh gets all 7 aliyahs. I'm not sure if I was going to be discussing any of the other possible or what people are doing, but so tonight Ari's going to teach us, learn with us how this is. It's kind of weird. If you before this, if you would have asked someone 6 months ago, like, can one person get all 7 aliyahs? Maybe say, I don't know, maybe yes, maybe no, but like that's really weird. And why would anyone ever do that? But that's what we've been doing for the time being, at least. So I guess without further ado, okay, Ari, why don't you enlighten us, educate us?
Okay. Hi. So I haven't given too many shiurim before, so hopefully you can bear with me as I try to do this. I made up a source sheet, which I'll share in a minute. Basically, I just want to go through a bunch of sources, and we can try to explore the basis of doing this. Having one person get all of the Aliyot. Talk about the maybe halachic pros and cons to that. And yeah, so let me share my screen. And let's see. Okay. All right. Can you guys see that? Okay. All right. Basically, any discussion of the laws of Torah reading has to start with Masechet Megillah in the Talmud, because pretty much almost all the laws of Torah reading are found in Masechet Megillah. By the way, let me know if you can hear me okay, or if there are any. Okay. So basically, I think it's the third parak in Megillah. So why don't we just jump right in and we can explore some of these things. And if anybody has any thoughts about anything that we're reading or any questions, feel free to jump in, at least for now, because it'll be good to have a little bit of discussion. I'll try to prompt you if I think of something that I discussed. But all right, so Masechet Megillah, source number 1, Masechet Megillah Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph. So the Mishnah says, jumping in the middle right here, well, B'Sheni v'Chamishi b'Shabbat b'Mincha Korin Shlosha. So on Monday and Thursday and on Shabbat and Mincha, 3 people read. That's saying that basically that you have 3 aliyahs on those times. And in at least in the way that the Talmud discusses it, it's always somebody who's reading. It's not like the way we do it now, where we have one person reading for one person getting an aliyah and somebody else doing the reading. That's an innovation that started in the Middle Ages at some point. But anyway, so basically we said that 3 people read. Okay. So you can't have fewer than that, and you can't have more than that, and you don't say haftarah. So this is some interesting language here. In Pochtin Mehen, you can't have fewer than 3 readers. So right there, that's something to think about. Another skipping ahead a little bit, Hapotech v'halchotem b'Torah mevarech lefanea v'la'achara. So this is a little obscure, but it basically means the first person who reads and the last person who reads, they bless before and after. So the Kohen, or the first aliyah, says the bracha before his aliyah, and then after the aliyah, no bracha. The second aliyah, there are no brachot at all, and the third aliyah, there's a bracha at the end. And then similarly, if you skip down here, b'Shabbat Shiva, in Pochtin Mehen. On Shabbat, you have 7 readers, and you don't have fewer than that. But you can have more. Same thing. The first Aliyah says a bracha before, but not after, and then the last Aliyah says a bracha after. So that's not what we do now. So that's interesting. So if we look at the next page of the Talmud, Masechet Megillah Chaf Alf Amud Bet, so it quotes this line, "In Pochtin Mehen Ve'in Mosifin." So we neither decrease or add to them. Okay, it's actually not quoting the right part, but anyway. So the Talmud brings up Tana. It says in a Braita, "Hapoteach mevarech lefanea, v'chotem mevarech le'acharea." Same thing. The first person says, this explains what the Mishnah says a little bit more precisely. The first one says a bracha before, and the last one says a bracha afterwards. All right. V'ha'idna, today, dechulu mevarchi lefanea le'acharea. And nowadays, where every Ola says a bracha before and after. So already by the times of the Talmud, they were doing it like we do now, where you have a bracha before and after every Aliyah. Hayinu tama de takinu rabbanan gzera mishum hanechnesim mishum hayotziin. So that the reason for that is it was a decree of the rabbis on account of the people who come in and the people who leave. So the worry is, and there are actually various other things in the laws of Torah reading that have to do with this, but they're worried that people are going to walk in the middle of Torah reading, or they're going to leave early, and they're worried that if somebody walks in the middle and then they see somebody get up for an aliyah and not say a bracha beforehand, or see somebody has the second aliyah and they finish the aliyah and there's no bracha afterwards, and then they leave. They might not realize that you have to have a bracha before and after Torah reading. So in order that people should not, and I guess that's important because it's not only reading Torah publicly, it's also, well, all right, scratch that. So I guess the Talmud, for some reason, the rabbis were concerned about that, so they established this decree that you read before and after. Okay, fine. So now we move on, just a couple of things from the Mishnah Torah in the Rambam. In the Laws of Prayer, chapter 12, he talks about Torah reading. So looking here, one thing it says, Lo yihu hakorin pachot mishosha anashim. So one of the general rules for Torah reading is you should never have fewer than 3 men reading Torah. This is a slight generalization of what we see in the Talmud. But again, that seems to contradict this idea of having one person read, but okay. And then here, Kol echad v'echad min hakorin potech sefer Torah. Every one of the readers opens the Torah. Umabit umakom shehu karebo. He sees the place where he's reading. V'achar kach umar baruch. He says baruch, and then he says the rest of the brachot. V'chozer mavarech. Okay. Okay. Let's skip down here. V'achar kach korei ad she yashlim likrot. And afterwards, he reads until he finishes reading. Again, this is the old style where the person getting the aliyah was the person who was reading. At least the Rambam doesn't even mention the concept that we can do it the way we do it now. We do see that in the Shulchan Aruch and I think Tosfot and a few other places. V'go sefer u'mavarach, and then afterwards he says a bracha. So the Rambam establishes the halacha like we learned in the Gemara, that you say a bracha before and after each aliyah. He doesn't even mention the old style way of doing it, which is a bracha only at the beginning and at the end, but he tells you the new way, which is for each aliyah. That'll be important later, so okay. And let's see, if we skip ahead to halacha 16, again, in Pochtin Mehen Aval Mosifin Olam. So on Shabbat, you have fewer than 7 aliyot, but you can have more. And during the week, in Pochtin Minyan Zeh, you can't have fewer or more than the 3. Okay. And then the next halacha, B'chol kriya v'kriya me'elu kohen koreh rishon v'acharav levi v'acharav miYisrael. So this is just establishing the principle that everybody knows about, that always the kohen reads first, Levi reads second, and then Yisrael reads third, and after that. And skipping ahead, a few Kohen Kodem Likrot Lifnei Chacham Gadol Yisrael. So even ahead of a Yisrael who's a great scholar, if there's an unlearned Kohen, you still give the Kohen the first Aliyah. So that'll also be maybe relevant with respect to whether if there's a Kohen in the room, you can not give him the Aliyah. All right. So anyway, I think if you just saw these sources, you would think that basically you can't have fewer than 3, or let's take Shabbat. You can't have fewer than 7 people called up to the Torah. That certainly sounds like a problem if you're having everybody reading. Because you can't have fewer. And even if you ignore that part, there could be an issue because at least the way Torah reading was originally established, there was no bracha in between. So how would you even differentiate between the readings? If one person were to read multiple aliyot, it would just be sort of as if you had one person reading. So that would really be that would seem to be a problem. Okay. Now, just to anticipate what people might say, which is with respect to what happens if there's a Kohen, something that happens very frequently, if there's a Kohen in Shul but there's no Levi. So the Talmud in Masechet Gittin, Nun Tet Amud Bet, says, Amar Abaye, Naktinan Ein Sham Levi Kora Kohen. So we have a tradition that if there's no Levi present, the Kohen reads for him. Ini, really? Behar Amar Kohen Achar Kohen Lo Yikra Mishum Pigmo Shel Rishon. So Talmud is immediately puzzled because they would assume that if a Kohen reads in place of the Levi, then that would mean that one Kohen would read the first Aliyah, and then another Kohen would read the second Aliyah, because obviously that's how you would do. That's always how you do Torah reading, that you have 2 different people reading. But it's a problem because according to Rabbi Yochanan, you're not allowed to have one Kohen read after another Kohen, because people might say that, and similarly, Levi achar Levi lo yikra mishum pagum shneim, and similarly, you can't have one Levi read after another Levi, because the implication is going to be that the first Kohen was not actually a valid Kohen. Like you called him up and then you realized, oh, just kidding, he's not kosher. We have to call up another Kohen instead. So if you did that, people would then think that the first Kohen wasn't a valid Kohen, and that would be really bad because then people would think that that first guy wasn't a Kohen, and you really want people to know who the Kohanim are. So that's the Talmud's problem, but then they answer it very quickly. Ki ka'amrinan b'oto Kohen. No, Abaye was talking about the same Kohen. So basically the Talmud, okay, well, you have the same Kohen read the second Aliyah. So again, that raises the issue of how can that be, especially if, as it was originally, you don't have any break between the Aliyot. You just have a separate person. If you don't have a separate person coming up, then how do you have a second Aliyah? And why doesn't this just become, two people reading Torah during the week, or 6 on Shabbat? Okay. Then just basically the Rambam, he codifies the same halacha, basically that if there's no Kohen, then the first one he makes it more clear. He goes back and he reads the second Aliyah, but you shouldn't have another Kohen reading instead. All right, so let's leave aside how that's possible. So now we've at least seen that there, so again, in the modern system, it's not as unusual because everybody says the bracha before and after, so you can have an aliyah. But let's leave aside how it was possible beforehand, before we changed to the current system. And now we'll begin to see for the first source that begins to look similar to what we the practice of that a lot of shuls have been doing recently, which is having one person get all the aliyot. So the Tosefta, also in Masechet Megillah, says the following. Beit HaKnesset she'en lahem misha yikra. So in a synagogue in which doesn't have Ela Echad, so a synagogue in which there's only one person literally who will read, but most of the later authorities interpret this clearly to mean only one person who knows how to read. So again, this was also back in the day before you had a dedicated Baal Koreh. So you have only one person knows how to read. So Koreh, so it says Omed v'Koreh v'Yoshev afilu shiva pamim. So he should stand up and read, and then sit down, and then he should do that 7 times. And we'll skip the rest of this Tosefta for now. But there are actually a lot of different versions of the Tosefta because the Tosefta wasn't very well preserved. There are a lot of different manuscripts, and it seems that a lot of the Rishonim had different manuscripts of the Tosefta. In fact, I've actually seen, I have an English translation of the Tosefta, which has a different manuscript than this. And that seems to be closer to the manuscript from the Rif. So the Rif of Yitzhak Alfasi was a 10th century rabbi from Morocco who wrote sort of a condensed version of the Talmud. And at the end of the condensed version of the Talmud, he sometimes throws in additional stuff. Like here, he's throwing in some passages from the Tosefta that didn't appear in the Talmud. So we see Tosefta, and you'll see that there are some slight differences. B'nei HaKnesset she'en lahem misha yikra el echad. So same thing. A synagogue where only one person can read, knows how to read. Omed v'Koreh v'Yoshev ve'omed v'Yoshev. So here, instead of just saying he sits and reads and stands and reads and sits and repeats, he says he stands and reads and sits and stands and reads and sits. So here he makes it more clear. What happens is at the end of each aliyah, he sits down and then stands back up again. And that's how you can distinguish between Aliyot in the old system, where before you had the current system of saying a bracha before and after. So that's what they say. That's what they say here. Okay, we'll skip the second part of the Rif for now. Okay, so now we can go back and look at Tosfot on Gittin. So Gittin is, remember, where we had the thing about the Kohen reading twice. So I had to do this translation myself, so hopefully it's good, because I couldn't find a translation of Tosfot. So Kikam Rinan Bo'oto Kohen. So basically, we're talking about the same Kohen reading twice. So Lamai Tikun B'HaKoreh Et HaMegillah. So with respect to what was established in the 3rd chapter of Megillah, Shekol Echad Mevarech L'Fanei L'Acharei Nichas. So where it says that everybody says a bracha before and after, this makes sense. So like I was saying before, having Kohen read twice makes sense if you can read, if he says a bracha before and after. But Ve'afilu Lefi Mai Detznan Sham Hapotech Mevarech L'Fanei Ve'chotem Mevarech L'Achareha. But according to the older view in the Mishnah, which is that you only say a bracha at the beginning and the end of the whole Torah reading. So how do you answer that? So tzarich lomar ba'oto kohen shekoreh pamayim sheholech v'yoshev ben yotayim. So you have to say that the kohen sort of goes away from the Torah and he sits down in between his aliyot. De'ibaydema b'mai having minikra shtei kriyot, because otherwise, how would you know that there were 2 readings? It would all just appear to be one reading if you didn't sit down in between. Ki hahi detanya b'tosefta de Megillah. So now they're going to cite the Tosefta that we just read. Im lo haya. So here again we have another variation. It says Im lo hayasham ela achad deyada likrot. So now it makes explicit, not just one who will read. It says if you only have one person who knows how to read, koreh v'yoshev ve'omed v'koreh. So he reads and then sits down and stands back up and reads again. So v'zeh haya nami kodem hatakana da'achar takana shel kol echad mevarech lefanea or acharei lo tzarich. And this is and that obviously was talking about before the decree that we say a bracha before and after every aliyah, because otherwise you wouldn't need to do that. So the implication being that that saying a bracha in between takes the place of needing to sit down in between every aliyah. He doesn't explicitly say that, but that's the implication from Tosfot. And then quickly at the end, he says, "Umisham Rabbeinu Yehuda kadvu de'im ein beit haKnesset rak kohanim achad koreh b'makom shiva v'al kol parsha yivarech lefanei u'acharei." So Rabbeinu Yehuda said, based on this principle that we just said, that if there's a synagogue where every single person in the synagogue is a Kohen, then basically you have one Kohen and he reads all 7 Aliyot. And in fact, and then he says the bracha before and after each one. No mention of sitting up and sitting down in between. Okay. All right. Now we'll come to the Torah. The Torah was a 14th century legal codifier. He was the son of the Rosh, and the Shulchan Aruch was based on the same structure as the Torah. Okay, so the Torah quotes the same Tosefta. Tanya b'Tosefta, says in Tosefta, b'nei HaKnesset she'ein lahem mi she'yikra el echad. So he goes back to the older formulation that if you go to a synagogue where only one person reads, kegon, so then he gives an example. Kegon she'ein ba mi she'yodei likrot. For example, only one person knows how to read el echad. Omed v'koreh v'yoshev v'chozer v'omed v'koreh v'yoshev. Afiu sheva pamim. So same thing. As long as only one person knows how to read, that person should stand up and sit down 7 times and get all 7 Aliyot. Okay. V'katav Adoni Avi HaRosh. And so my father and teacher, the Rosh, that's the Torah speaking, Katav, Dezut HaTosefta Nishneit L'fi HaMegarishon. So he's saying that the Tosefta was taught according to the original custom, where, as I was explaining, L'chach tarich l'shev b'chol pam v'pam l'hakir shehen zayin. So you have to sit in between in order that people should know that Aliyot. Aval ha'idna shetzarich levarech b'chol pam v'pam bracha rishona b'achrona k'mo kohen shekoreh b'makom levi ein tzarich l'shev. So he's basically saying the similar thing as Tosfot, which is that you don't have to, although he's making explicit, you don't have to sit in between the Aliyot as long as you say a bracha in between. But he gives a little bit, but he gives a different halacha with respect to the city that's al Kohanim. He says, Ir shekuim olaviim kulam korin b'Torah pamayim zerishon pamayim chavero. So it sounds like there, you don't have the same Kohen read multiple times. You alternate between the Kohanim, even though only Kohanim in the synagogue. And one Kohen will read the first Aliyah one time, and another Kohen will read the first Aliyah a different time, whatever, but they're not all reading the same Aliyah. So there seems to be a little bit of a bias here against doing that, unless you don't know how, unless nobody knows how to read. Okay, so now we go to the Mishnah Torah. Let's skip this first thing for now. So the middle line here. Okay. Maftir Oam Haminyan. So Sharehu Koreh B'Torah. So this is just an interesting thing that will help us understand how this works. So the Rambam says that if you do happen to read, he says that the maftir, which we usually read as the 8th Aliyah, it actually counts towards the number of readers of the Torah. So it counts as one of the 7. So you don't actually need to do it the way we do it, 7. But then he says, V'im hifsik shalech sibor bekadish ben mashlim ben hamaftir However, if you say Kaddish after 7 Aliyot and then you read Maftir, then the Maftir doesn't count because Kaddish separates. Okay. Okay, now getting back to this thing. So the Rambam also says, Tzibor de lo haya behem yodei likrot. If a congregation doesn't have anybody who knows how to read, elachad, so only one person on the shul knows how to read Torah. Oa v'koreh v'yored v'chozer v'koreh shniya. So he goes back and tells you the old way. He says, you read that one person reads all the Aliyot, v'koreh shniya v'shlishit ad she'igmor minyan hakorim shel toyom. He reads the total number that are supposed to be read for that day, 3 or 7 or whatever. But he has to sit down and stand up in between each Aliyah. So now the Kesef Mishnah, which is actually the same as the author of the Shulchan Aruch of Yosef Karo, he has a little bit of a question here. So, so first he cites the Ran, who's a commentary on the Rif, and he explains basically here that that the reason why you have to do this is the reason why according to the Rif that you have to sit down in between each Aliyah is, again, as we said, so that you can distinguish between the Aliyot because there's no bracha before and after. Okay. But now comes the interesting. We get down here. Vakashya li dekevan sharabenu, and this is difficult for me because our rabbi, he's talking about the Rambam, lo hiskir haminahag harishon lama lo lichtov din za lachach. So if you remember earlier when we read the Rambam, he said that when you read Torah, he mentioned that you say a bracha before and after each aliyah. He didn't even mention the old way of doing it, which is that you read only before and after the last aliyah. But here, in this halacha, he says that you stand up and sit down between aliyah, which is based on the old system. So there seems to be an inconsistency between these two portions of the Rambam. If anybody didn't catch that, let me know. I'll try to explain it again. But so therefore he says, so he has to figure out how can that be? Why is the Rambam being inconsistent with himself? Ani Omar, I say, she'afilu la'achar hatakana. So even after that decree, where we have a bracha before and after aliyah, Sover Rabbeinu, the Rambam thinks shetzarich lishev la'amod, still have to stand and sit between every aliyah. Kedei la'asot hekara ki'ilu hem shava olim shakach darcham lakum mimkomam la'alot. So even though you have a bracha in between, it's still not enough of a distinction between aliyot. You still have to stand up and sit down because that's the normal way of doing it, right? Normally, you call people up to the Torah and somebody is sitting down, they stand up, they go to the Torah, the person who's there then goes and sits down. So that's the normal way you do it. So that's the way you should do it here also. So unlike most of the other authorities who seem to think that you don't have to do that, that's what the Kesef Mishnah, at least that's how the Kesef Mishnah is interpreting the Rambam. Now, Rav Yosef Karo doesn't really discuss this issue in the Beit Yosef, which is his extensive commentary on the Torah, which is his real major magnum opus. But in his more commonly known Shulchan Aruch, he says the following in Kuf Gimel Halacha He, Siman He. Beit HaKnesset she'en bahem mi sheyodeh likrot el echad. So a synagogue which only has one person who knows how to read, Yivarech v'yikra k'tzat, he should bless and read v'yikra k'tzat psukim, and he should read a few verses, v'yivarech la'achareim, and then he should say a bracha afterwards, v'yichzor l'varech tchila v'korei k'tzat psukim, u'mevarech la'achareim, and then he should go back and say another bracha and read a few more verses, and then say a bracha again. V'chein yaseh kama pamim k'mispar ha'olim she'oto yom. you should keep doing that as many times as they're Aliyot. You notice he doesn't mention standing up or sitting down. He doesn't say that you shouldn't, but he doesn't mention it at all, which is interesting because he just said in the Kesef Mishnah that really you should sit in between. So it could be that he really just thought that the Rambam thought that, and no one else thought that. But that's a little bit of a problem because normally the Shulchan Aruch would hold like the majority of the Rish, the Rif, the Rosh, and the Rambam, and the Rif doesn't address this case specifically, but the Rif seems to imply that you do have to sit down in between every Aliyah. So both the Rif and the Rambam seem to require sitting and standing. So you would think that the Shulchan Aruch would require that, but for some reason it doesn't. And I actually don't have an answer to that, other than to say that it seems to me that it doesn't hurt to sit down and stand up in between Aliyot. So based on the Rambam, I would recommend doing that. But there are authorities that most of the other authorities seem to disagree. So, all right. Then getting on to this other issue that we talked about before about the city full of Kohanim. So the Shulchan Aruch says, Ir Shakua Kohanim im yesh Yisrael achad b'nehem, oto Yisrael koreh rishon mibnei darchei shalom. So here you have a city which is entirely Kohanim, but there's one Israelite in the city. So then you have to figure out who is the first Aliyah, because there's always some dispute about who will read first. So if there are a lot of Kohanim, it's easier. In this case, you give the Yisrael the first Aliyah, and then you get in order to avoid arguments. Okay, but now the case we're more interested in. B'chol she'en behem Yisrael kedei svukam or she'en sham Yisrael kal. So any city that doesn't have any Kohen at all. Kore Kohen achar Kohen achar Kohen she'en sham mishum pagam shehakol yod'im she'en sham el kohanim v'hu adin le'ir shekol levim. Okay, so in a city where everybody's a Kohen, you can then read. You don't have one person read all the Aliyot. You have a Kohen read and then a different Kohen read and then a different read, and there's no worry. Remember, the original reason why we say you can't have one Kohen read after another is because we're going to make that's going to be an implication that the first one was invalid. Here, the city is entirely made out of Kohanim. Everybody knows that everybody in the city is a Kohen anyway, so there's not going to be any implication that that the Kohen is invalid. So there you don't do it that way, and you have a different Kohen read every Aliyah. So again, there seems to be a little bit of a, at the very least, the rabbis don't seem to like this concept of one person reading Aliyot if it's not absolutely necessary. Okay, there aren't too many commentaries. So going back to what we were talking about before, when the Shulchan Aruch here. There aren't too many commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch that address this directly, at least of the standard commentaries in the Shulchan Aruch. The Mishnah Berurah addresses it briefly. The Kaf HaChaim has a more in-depth discussion of this. So let's read the Kaf HaChaim. Why don't we just read this in English? This is my translation. So in a synagogue which only has one person to read. Okay, so even though nowadays, since the Chazan reads for all of the Olim, right? That's how almost every shul does it now. Why not just have the single person who knows how to read serve as the Chazan and call up 7 Olim as it is customary, right? That's the normal way. We always do it every week. So even if only that person knows how to read, it's not a big deal. Just have that person read all the Aliyot, yes, but everybody gets it. But everybody gets called up for an Aliyah. So one could say that this is that the Shulchan Aruch mentioned this case to talk about for those who are accustomed, even to today, to have all of the Olim read for themselves and not rely on the Chazan, such as the Yemenites, because even now in the Yemenite community, at least as of 1930 something, when the Kaf HaChaim was writing this, I don't know how it is now. Because even now, all of the Olim read for themselves without relying on the Chazan. So that's how it works in the Yemenite synagogue. You get called up to the Torah, you read, you sit down, somebody else gets called up. Or, for example, if none of the congregation is even able to read along with a chazan, word for word from what's written, for in such a case, they aren't able to be called up according to the Shulchan Aruch, as it's written in this 139.2. So just to explain that, according to the Shulchan Aruch, when you get an Aliyah, you are supposed to read along quietly with the Chazan. You're not allowed to read out. You're not allowed to read out loud because the Talmud says you're not allowed to have two people read Torah simultaneously. But the Shulchan Aruch wants you to have one person read, the person who's getting the Aliyah quietly, basically, so he's not saying the bracha levatah, so that he is reading. And the implication from the Shulchan Aruch is that actually, if you don't know how to do that, if you can't read Hebrew, or if you can't read Hebrew at all, or if you can't even mimic what the Chazan is saying, then you're not eligible to get an Aliyah at all. So the Kaf HaChaim is saying, well, maybe the Shulchan Aruch was saying, still brought up this halacha for that situation, right? The situation where only one person knows how to read, and not only that, but everyone else in Shul is such an Am Haaretz that they can't even read quietly along with the Chazan. All right. So those are two possibilities. Those are the only two possibilities really he entertains. But then he says, but it seems to me that even in a congregation in which all the Olim are accustomed to read for themselves, or even in the case where it would still be better if only one person knows how to read, just to do it the way everyone else does it, and to break with their traditional custom and have people come up for Aliyot and have one person read. And similarly, even in the case where people don't know how to read, even where nobody can read along with a chazan, the Balkore for their Aliyah. So he says, even now, they should still call up 7 Olim, because nowadays we're lenient about this practice. That is, even though the Shulchan Aruch is strict about it, it's not absolutely required that you read along with Chazan when you get an Aliyah. So the Kaf HaChaim basically sort of reads this halacha out of existence. There's really no case in which you would ever do this. Now, they weren't talking about the current situation, which is a case where you have people who where it's unsafe maybe to have two people standing next to each other. So maybe you could construct an argument that would be another case. It's a little difficult to do that, because I guess the straight text in the Tosefta doesn't. If you go back here, where's the Tosefta? It just says she'ein lahem mi sheyikra. It doesn't say somebody who doesn't know how to read. They only have one person who will read. So if you're only so you could make an argument that the Tosefta leaves room for the situation where where you can do it even if people don't know how, even if even if more than one know how to read. But it's a little unusual. Okay, now I guess I'll read. We'll go back and give another argument. I think doing this may be a problem, having one person read all 7 Aliyot. So look at the Talmud. This is something which is maybe a slightly controversial Gemara, but I'm not gonna focus too much on the controversial aspect. But the Gemara in Masechet Megillah, Kaf Gimel Amud Aleph, says, Tanu Rabbanan, Hakol Olin L'minyan Shiva, V'afilu Katan V'afilu Isha. So anybody can go up and get an Aliyah and count for the 7 Aliyot on Shabbat, even a woman. Aval Amru Chachamim Isha lo tikra b'Torah mipnei kavod tzibor. However, a woman should not read Torah because of the honor of the congregation. Now, the rabbis have various discussions about what that means and why a woman reading is disrespectful to the congregation. or it somehow impugns the honor of the congregation. The most common explanation is this one here, although it's actually not found until, nobody really explicitly articulates this reason until the 20th century, but I only have this source in English. This is Daf Shivui. I don't honestly know what this source is, but it's available on Sefaria. So it's talking about the Braita that was just cited about women not reading because of Kvod Tzibor. This Braita teaches that anyone can have an Aliyah, even a woman or child. However, the rabbis consider it to be disrespectful to the community for a woman or child to have an Aliyah because it suggests that the men could not read the Torah themselves. We hear of this in other areas as well. Birkat Hamazon and Hallel. It is not respectful for it to seem that the men cannot recite these texts. So if the reason why, it seems to me that if the reason why we don't allow women to read Torah is because the implication, the only reason really, is because it's disrespectful to the community, and if the reason for that is that the implication is that nobody else in the community knows how to read, then it would seem that if anybody else in the congregation knows how to read, that one person read all 7 Aliyot would be a problem, because that would imply that nobody else in the congregation knows how to read. And even if you look at you read this in conjunction with the Kaf HaChaim, not only does it apply that nobody knows how to read Torah, which back in the day was a bigger thing. Like in the times of the Talmud, everybody learned. When you went to school, you studied the Torah, and basically everybody learned the Torah by heart with all the vowels and the chanting. It was actually only written down the way we have it now in the 8th, probably the 9th century, 9th or 10th century. So everybody knew how, unless you were a real Am Haaretz. But anyway, but even according to the reading of the Kaf HaChaim, which is that you get an Aliyah as long as you know how to follow along with the Chazan. The implication of one person reading would be, one person getting Aliyot would be, not only is everybody in the congregation an Am Haaretz who can't read, who doesn't know the Torah reading this week, but they're actually such an Am Haaretz that they can't even read along with the Chazan when he's reading, or even mimic what the Chazan is saying, even if he can't read Hebrew. But he's at least is familiar with hearing and looking. So anyway, that's my pitch for why I think it's a bad idea. But strictly speaking, there may be some grounds for it. So anyway, that's basically it, unless anybody has any questions.
I just had a question about the minhag, where some people say Hashem Imachem right before from Megillat Ruth. Do we know why they say that?
That's a good question. Yeah, most Sephardim do that. Hashem Imachem, Yivarach Hashem. I'm not exactly sure of the reason for that. I think I did once see a reason for it, but I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, it's cool though. It's a cool custom.
Yep. It could be, by the way, I don't mean this to be definitive. It could be that I'm missing something, right? I didn't do an exhaustive search of the Acharonim. As you can see, I only have one Acharon cited here. I guess it probably would be helpful. I should have done this. It didn't occur to me until just right now to look at. There have been tshuvot written in cases of quarantine situations, cases where synagogues have been closed. There was actually a case, I forget if Rabbi Hellman mentioned this a couple weeks ago, no, maybe not, or maybe you did, I got that lecture, where people were in quarantine in Italy, and there were 2 groups of Jews who were in adjacent quarantine rooms, or adjacent quarantine houses. And each group had 5 men in it. But normally, so they couldn't have a minyan. But so then the question is, well, if they could see the people in the other room, in the other quarantine facility across the street or whatever, could they combine to form a minion. So anyway, so there definitely have been there definitely have been a lot of a fair amount of tshuva. There have definitely been a lot of plagues over the past few hundred years. So there are tshuva that address situations. I don't know if there's ever been a situation where shuls were open, but people were afraid to stand next to each other in shul, which is the current situation, even with a mask. That is where.
Ariel, to say, so I think your argument for maybe we should make the Balkori sit down and stand up, I don't know if we'll change it for the Shabbos, but that seems like a good point. In terms of your basic, the bigger point, I think the reason why, the counter argument of why it's not a problem to have one person read everything and that it doesn't imply that people don't know how to read, is because also everyone understands that he's reading it because of this unique circumstance. It's not because no one else knows how. So that's what I guess the other people would say.
All right. I guess there's room to argue that. That's fair enough.
Okay, and also in this case, I get part of this has to do with the fact that we don't want multiple people touching anything.
Being near each other.
You're gonna make Ari start another hour-long shir. I'm just warning you, Ellen.
That's next week.
No.
I mean, that just adds to the what. Otherwise we could say Ari can volunteer for one Aliyah every week, and somebody else could volunteer for another Aliyah every week.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that would be a good way to do it. Now, in terms of touching, there may be ways to get around it. You could have everybody sanitize their hands or put on gloves immediately before and touching the Torah, and then taking them off immediately after. Or maybe you could have the other possibility is, and I haven't researched this enough. You normally are supposed to have the person who gets the Aliyah touch the Torah at the time that he's saying the brachot, at least, if not also during Torah reading. But that is not so clear cut. I think there are authorities who allow you to not touch the Torah.
I think that's not so critical. I mean, Ellen, you're right, and Ari and I have discussed this. In principle, halachically, have different people learn their aliyahs and then have the Torah open and have them not touch the Torah is halachically better. The reason why we don't do that is because there are going to be people who are not able to do that. And, we don't want to embarrass those people. And so you could say, okay, we won't give it to everyone, but it becomes even more problematic if they're Kohanim and Leviim in the shul who are not capable of doing that. And then it's going to become very obvious that, what if we only have one Kohen at the minyan and that Kohen is not comfortable reading? So what are we going to do? I think there's too great a possibility of publicly embarrassing someone. So that's why. But there are places that do that. Someone told me that in the very small minyan of the Boston Kollel, that's what they do. They everyone has to learn an aliyah, and I guess everyone there can do it, or whoever can't is fine with it, and that's what they do. And I know
They don't have
other
anything
places
else to do all day.
Something that Rabbi Hellman just mentioned raises another issue, which is I touched on this earlier, but what if there's a Kohen in the shul, and then that Kohen is not the person who's getting all the aliyah. As we saw earlier, even that the Kohen has precedence even over a great Torah scholar. The Kohen still has to have the first aliyah. And in fact, the halacha generally is that if there's a Kohen in the shul and for some reason you don't want to give the Kohen the aliyah, the Kohen leaves the shul. And because he's no longer in shul, you can call somebody else up instead. And that works as long as you have more than a minyan. But I don't know what the case would be if you only had as far as I understand it, if you only have a minyan, you have to call up the Kohen. You can't pick where you have him leave the shul. And I've never heard of a case where you have a Kohen in the room and except the only situation is if the Kohen is in the middle of davening. So then it's sort of as if he's not there. It's impossible to call him up for that reason. So, but aside from that, and maybe you can make an argument that it's impossible to call up the Kohen, but because of this. But it would seem to me that if you're gonna do it this way, we should ask the Kohen, any Kohanim, to leave the room.
Can a Kohen halachically turn down an aliyah?
Meaning not to another Kohen, you're saying?
No, like if he just doesn't want to do it, if they call him up and say like Kohen Krav, and he's like, I'm not doing an aliyah, or I'm not doing Birkas Kohanim, can the Kohen?
Birchas Kohanim for sure he cannot. If he's in the room for it, he's obligated to go up. It's a mitzvah. It's a for an aliyah he could turn it down if there's another Kohen, but if he's the only Kohen, I don't think he can turn it down.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, pretty certain of that. Yeah.
So anyway, any other questions?
Thanks for doing this.
Yashkoyach, Hari.
Sure. Hopefully it wasn't too repetitive. I realized we went through that same Tosefta a bunch of times, but
Sounds great. You were very prepared. Thank you very much.
so.
Yashkoyach, Hari. It was great. Thank you very much, Hari.
Okay, good night.
All right.
Yeah. Good night, everyone. Have a good
Shabbat shalom,
Shabbos.
y'all.
Yeah, Shabbat shalom.